What if I told you that the very habit millions of men consider harmless could quietly fuel prostate swelling, drain your energy, and even raise your cancer risk? I'm not exaggerating. I've seen it firsthand in my patients, and the science backs it up. As a doctor, men often lower their voice when they ask me this question, almost as if confessing a secret. Doctor, is the way I release myself destroying my health? And let me tell you, the answer isn't simple, because while some patterns protect the prostate, others slowly inflame it until one day the symptoms hit: hard pain, weak flow, sleepless nights in the bathroom, and the crushing fear of cancer. I remember one man, 65, who thought everything was fine until his PSA test came back alarming. He wasn't overweight, he didn't smoke, yet his prostate was inflamed to the point of misery. What shocked him most was learning that his private routine, something he thought was keeping him balanced, was actually tipping his hormones, stressing his glands, and pushing his health toward the danger zone. Here's the truth. Your prostate is not just about sex. It's about hormones, blood flow, immunity, even mental clarity. And ignoring it is like ignoring a ticking clock. You don't see the damage until it's almost too late. But here's the good news. The same science that exposes the dangers also shows us the way out. Simple natural habits can reduce inflammation, restore balance, and protect your vitality well into your senior years. No shame, no guesswork, just clarity and control. So if you're a man over 50 or you care about one, this message could change everything, because once you understand what's really happening inside your prostate, you'll never look at your habits the same way again. Let's dive in. When men cross into their 50s and 60s, the body doesn't just age on the outside, it changes silently on the inside in ways most never realize until symptoms appear. I've seen patients who were once strong and energetic slowly lose muscle, struggle with stamina, and then whisper to me about problems in the bedroom. They thought these were separate issues, but the truth is they are all connected through one organ, the prostate. Think of the prostate like a tiny engine that controls both performance and vitality. When it's healthy, hormones stay balanced, blood flow stays strong, and muscle strength holds steady. But when it's inflamed or congested, it's like running a car with a clogged fuel line. You get weakness, fatigue, and a loss of drive that feels far beyond just aging. Science confirms this. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that men with chronic prostate problems report up to 40% higher rates of muscle weakness and fatigue. And in my clinic, I've watched men who ignore their prostate health end up trapped in a cycle of poor sleep, low energy, and declining intimacy with their partners. This is why I always tell my patients, don't brush off those small changes. If you wake up multiple times at night, if your flow weakens, or if your energy feels drained, your prostate may be signaling distress long before serious disease strikes. But here's where it gets even more urgent, because while age sets the stage, it's your daily habits that decide whether the prostate stays healthy or slowly pushes you toward inflammation and cancer. And that's exactly what we need to uncover next. After years of listening to my patients, one pattern has become crystal clear. What men do in private has a direct impact on their prostate health. Some men believe that avoiding release protects their strength, while others think frequent release keeps them safe. The truth, as science shows us, is far more complex and far more important than most realize. When the prostate fluid builds up without being released, it's like water left standing in a glass. At first, it looks harmless, but Over time, it becomes stagnant, cloudy, and a perfect place for inflammation to grow. That's why men who go long periods without release often complain to me about heaviness, pressure, or discomfort in the pelvic area. On the other hand, I've also seen men who go to the opposite extreme, using stimulation so often that their prostate becomes irritated, their energy plummets, and their mental health suffers. Clinical studies support this balance. Research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that men with moderate, consistent ejaculation around 21 times a month showed a lower risk of prostate cancer compared to those with much lower frequency. But, and this is critical, that doesn't mean more is always better. Too much can cause exhaustion, hormonal imbalance, and even erectile fatigue. I once had a patient in his 50s who proudly told me he was protecting his prostate with constant release. Yet he came back months later, burned out, struggling with intimacy, and confused why his energy was gone. That's when I explained that the prostate thrives on balance, not extremes. And this leads us into a question that makes many men nervous. If balance is the key, how do age, hormones, and abstinence change the equation? Because the answer might shock you. In my practice, one of the most common fears I hear is this: "Doctor, if I hold back, will it raise my testosterone? And if I release too much, will I lose it?" These questions matter because hormones are the hidden engine of a man's vitality. And the truth isn't what most men expect. Short-term abstinence can cause a slight spike in testosterone, like letting pressure build inside a balloon. But studies show that after a week or so, that surge flattens and the hormone levels settle back to baseline. It's not a permanent boost, it's just a temporary illusion. On the flip side, chronic overstimulation doesn't make testosterone vanish overnight, but it can strain your system, exhaust your adrenal glands, and leave you feeling weaker, more fatigued, and less focused. One study from Harvard tracked thousands of men and found that consistent, moderate ejaculation seemed protective, not only against prostate congestion, but also against long-term cancer risk. Yet, what those numbers don't tell you is that every man's baseline is different. I've seen men in their 60s thriving with 2 or 3 releases a week, and others who felt best with less. The danger comes from either extreme too little, and the prostate becomes stagnant and inflamed too much, and the body never has time to recover. I remember a patient who swore that strict abstinence was making him stronger, but within months he developed painful swelling difficulty, urinating, and overwhelming anxiety. When we restored balance, moderate release, healthy diet, regular exercise, his symptoms improved dramatically. So here's the takeaway. Hormones don't demand perfection, they demand rhythm. But what happens when inflammation or infection enters the picture? That's where the story takes a darker turn. In my years as a physician, I've seen how quickly prostate health can turn from a quiet inconvenience into a storm that shakes a man's entire life. Infection and inflammation don't just attack the gland, they spread their effects through the body and mind. A man might come to me complaining of burning pressure or frequent trips to the bathroom, but what I also notice is the shadow on his face, fatigue, frustration, even depression. When the prostate becomes inflamed, it's like a fire smoldering in a small room. It doesn't stay contained. The inflammation releases chemical messengers that affect energy levels, mood, even sexual confidence. One patient told me he felt like a stranger in his own body, too tired to work, too distracted to sleep, and too anxious to be intimate with his wife. And I've seen this pattern again and again. Medical research supports these experiences. Men with chronic prostatitis are statistically more likely to develop anxiety and depression. Some studies estimate the risk of depressive symptoms rises by nearly 30% compared to men without prostate issues. That's not coincidence, it's biology and psychology colliding. But here's the dangerous trap in desperation. Some men turn to constant stimulation as a coping mechanism, only to find themselves even more fatigued and emotionally drained. The short burst of relief quickly gives way to deeper frustration, creating a cycle that erodes both physical and mental health. That's why I always remind my patients the prostate is not just a gland, it's a crossroads where the body and mind meet. And if we ignore its signals, the cost is far greater than discomfort. It's your quality of life. But how do you break this cycle and restore balance? The answer often begins not in the clinic, but in your daily relationship and lifestyle. In my clinic, I've learned that prostate health isn't only about biology, it's also about connection. Many men think of their habits as a private matter, something hidden away, but in reality, the state of your prostate often reflects the health of your lifestyle, your mindset, and yes, even your relationship with your partner. I've seen couples who come to me together. The husband feels frustrated with his symptoms while the wife feels shut out of his struggles. When intimacy fades, so does emotional closeness. Yet, when both partners work on it, sharing fears, adjusting expectations, supporting healthy changes, the improvement is remarkable. It's not just the gland that heals, it's the bond between them. From a lifestyle perspective, the evidence is undeniable. A balanced diet rich in vegetables, antioxidants, and omega-3s reduces inflammation and supports hormonal stability. Regular exercise boosts circulation and testosterone, while hydration keeps the prostate fluid moving smoothly like oil in an engine. And mindset matters too. Men who carry constant stress or guilt around their sexual habits often experience worse symptoms. I've watched stress tighten the body like a vice, raising inflammation and making every problem feel heavier. That's why I encourage my patients to think of prostate health as a three-legged stool: the physical body, the emotional connection, and the daily habits that hold it all steady. Remove one leg, and the whole structure wobbles. Keep all three strong, and you create balance that lasts well into later years. But here's the warning, because even the healthiest lifestyle can't protect you if you ignore the early signs. And too many men do exactly that, waiting until the problem explodes. So let's talk about the critical warning signs you must never overlook. One of the hardest parts of my job is meeting men who ignored the whispers from their prostate until they turned into screams. The early warning signs are subtle, but they matter. I've had patients tell me they thought waking up 3 or 4 times a night to urinate was just part of aging. Others brushed off weak flow, pelvic pressure, or even blood in the urine as temporary. But these are not small inconveniences, they're red flags. From a medical standpoint, these symptoms often mean the prostate is inflamed, enlarged, or struggling against an infection. Left unchecked, they can escalate into chronic pain, bladder damage, or even undetected cancer. That's why I stress the importance of regular checkups and the PSA test prostate-specific antigen. It's a simple blood test, yet it has saved countless lives by detecting trouble early. Prevention also means lifestyle vigilance. Diets high in processed meats, fried foods and junk snacks add fuel to the fire, driving inflammation higher. On the other hand, anti-inflammatory foods rich in antioxidants like colorful vegetables, berries, and nuts help put out those sparks before they spread. I tell my patients every bite you take is either fighting inflammation or feeding it. And here's what often surprises men. By the time symptoms feel unbearable, the disease may already be advanced. Catching it early with simple awareness and testing is the difference between a small adjustment and a life-altering diagnosis. But knowing the warning signs isn't enough, because what you put on your plate each day can either protect your prostate or silently sabotage it. And that brings us to one of the most overlooked but powerful factors in this journey: food. In all my years treating men with prostate concerns, one truth always rises to the surface. Your plate is often the most powerful medicine or the most dangerous poison. Every bite either cools inflammation or feeds it. And I've seen this play out again and again in my patients. Let's start with the foods that help. Red bell peppers, for example, are packed with vitamin C, which lowers oxidative stress in the gland. Pumpkin seeds are another favorite. They provide zinc, a mineral critical for healthy prostate fluid and hormone balance. And oily fish like mackerel or salmon deliver omega-3 fatty acids that calm inflammation, like pouring water on a fire. When my patients consistently add these foods, I notice not just improvements in their lab numbers, but in their energy, their sleep, and even their mood. Now let's talk about the enemies. Diets high in processed meats, fried foods, and saturated fats act like gasoline on inflammation. Cashew nuts and certain refined grains may sound harmless, but in excess, they add the wrong fats and irritants that strain the prostate. I remember one man who loved fast food burgers nearly every day. He was shocked when his scans showed a dangerously enlarged gland. Once we shifted his diet toward whole grains, vegetables, and omega-3 rich foods, his symptoms eased dramatically. This isn't about deprivation, it's about giving your body the raw materials to heal. I tell my patients, imagine your prostate like a sponge. Feed it junk and it swells and stiffens. Feed it nutrients and it stays supple, balanced, and resilient. But food is only one side of the coin, because the right supplements, when chosen wisely, can add an extra layer of protection. And this is where so many men make costly mistakes. After diet, the next question my patients always ask me is, "Doctor, what about supplements? Do they really help the prostate?" And the truth is, some can be remarkably effective, while others are little more than expensive bottles of false hope. Take saw palmetto, for example. Clinical studies show it may ease urinary symptoms in men with enlarged prostates by reducing inflammation and balancing hormone activity. Another promising option is lycopene, the powerful antioxidant found in tomatoes, which research links to lower prostate cancer risk. Even green tea extract has shown anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory effects in several studies. But I also caution my patients, supplements are not magic pills. They work best when layered on top of a healthy diet and lifestyle, not as a substitute. And some can even backfire. Too much selenium or vitamin E, for instance, has been linked to increased cancer risk in large trials. That's why I always emphasize moderation and professional guidance. One patient of mine came in with a bag full of supplements he bought online, hoping to cover all bases. In reality, half of them were useless, and 2 could have harmed his liver. Once we streamlined his regimen to a few targeted, evidence-based options, his symptoms improved, and his wallet breathed a sigh of relief. So yes, supplements can support the prostate, but only when chosen carefully. And yet, even the best supplement can't replace the power of early detection. Which brings me to a test that every man over 50 should know by name. One of the most powerful tools we have to protect men from silent prostate disease is also one of the simplest, the PSA test. PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen, a protein measured in the blood. When levels rise higher than normal, it can be an early signal of inflammation, enlargement, or even cancer, sometimes years before obvious symptoms appear. I'll never forget a patient of mine in his late 50s who came in for what he thought was a routine checkup. He felt fine, had no complaints, and almost skipped the blood work, but his PSA was elevated. Further testing revealed an early-stage cancer that we caught just in time. Today, he's alive, healthy, and grateful. That one simple test changed his future. That's why I urge my patients, don't wait for pain or urinary problems before checking. By then, the disease may already be advanced. A yearly PSA test, especially after age 50, can mean the difference between a quick treatment and a lifelong battle. Pair it with a digital rectal exam and imaging if needed, and we have a strong net to catch problems before they spiral out of control. But screening isn't just about tests, it's also about awareness. When men stay tuned to their body track changes in urinary flow or notice persistent discomfort, they give themselves a critical advantage. Early detection is the ultimate safety net. And once fear is lifted, men often ask me, "Doctor, if my prostate is healthy, how do I keep my intimate life healthy too?" That's when the conversation shifts from survival to connection. When men sit across from me, they rarely start by saying, "Doctor, I'm worried about my prostate." More often, they lower their voice and confess, "Something's changing in my performance." What many don't realize is that the two are deeply connected. A healthy prostate supports not just physical function, but the confidence and intimacy that make relationships thrive. I've counseled men who thought their struggles in the bedroom were purely physical, when in truth, stress, inflammation, and fear were playing just as big a role. One patient told me he felt ashamed every time he avoided his wife, thinking he had failed as a man. But once we treated his prostate inflammation, improved his lifestyle, and encouraged open communication with his partner, both his performance and his marriage were transformed. Science confirms what I see in real life: emotional closeness enhances sexual health. Studies show that men with supportive, communicative partners report better erectile function and higher satisfaction, even when facing prostate challenges. Physical closeness is not just about release, it's about connection, mutual understanding, and the feeling of being fully alive. That's why I tell my patients, don't separate your prostate health from your relationship health. They feed each other. Protect the gland and intimacy grows. Nurture intimacy and the gland responds with balance. It's a cycle worth protecting. And this brings us to the final, most important point of all. Because after decades of treating men, I've learned that the true key to prostate health isn't just one habit, one test, or one food. It's the mindset you carry forward, the belief that you can stay strong, connected, and vital, no matter your age. As we come to the end of this conversation, let me leave you with a simple but powerful reminder. Your prostate health is not just about one organ. It's about your whole life, your energy, your confidence, your relationships, and your future. We've talked about how aging habits, diet, stress, and intimacy all play a role. And the truth is, small choices you make today can protect you from years of pain and worry tomorrow. I've seen men in their 60s and 70s turn their lives around, not with drastic measures, but with steady, mindful steps. Eating more of the foods that heal instead of the ones that inflame, staying active, staying hydrated, communicating with their partner, and never ignoring the early signs. Most importantly, they chose not to suffer in silence. They took action, and that made all the difference. So, if you're watching this and you felt fear or confusion or even shame about your prostate or your sexual health, I want you to know this: you are not alone, and there is hope. Every man deserves to live with strength, clarity, and connection, no matter his age. If this message spoke to you, save this video so you can come back to it whenever you need encouragement. Share it with a friend because you never know who might be silently struggling. And make sure to subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell and stay with me here. I'll continue to bring you the latest medical insights and practical tips to protect your health and your masculinity for years to come. Now, I'd love to hear from you. How old are you? And what's the one change you need to make today for your health? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. And your story might inspire someone else.